Okay, folks, this will be the record shortest video of all these videos. Act 2, Scene 4. Very simple scene, nothing massively important in terms of developments, but, you know, something that is worth bearing in mind given our overall study of the play. So this is the final scene of Act 2, and it takes place, the understanding is a number of weeks have gone by since the murder, since that dramatic night when Macbeth killed the king and the body was discovered the next morning and Malcolm and Donalbain fled. And Shakespeare uses this scene as like a reportage scene. It's a scene that's used by him to kind of fill us in on what's happened in the meantime. So we learn from this character called Ross, who plays, you know, he's an interesting little character, Ross. He's not absolutely not one of the major characters in the play, but he does give, at certain moments, he gives us kind of important information. Don't forget, it was him who told us in Act 1, Scene 2 of Macbeth's victory with Banquo by his side over Sweno, the king of Sweno from the flats, over Sweno, the Viking Norwegian lord. And later on, he plays a similar role. So he tells us that there have been like really weird things happening in the natural world. And this is a sure sign of God's displeasure. He tells us that the unnatural events that were, you know, observed on the night of the king's death. Remember, Lennox talked about the strange screams of death, lamentings heard in the air, the chimneys blown down by the terrible storm. But there have been similar, you know, really weird things happening in nature. We then hear from Macduff, and when he speaks to Ross, we learn very important information. First of all, that Malcolm Macbeth and Donalbain, sure enough, have fled and are being blamed. And that as a consequence, the next most senior person in the royal family, Macbeth, he's been chosen by the nobles of Scotland to become the king. And he's gone to a place, now folks, this is very important. Look at that word. How do you pronounce it? Well, if you're talking about the baked good, I have very strong feelings that it's scone, not scone. Now, I don't want to offend all you scone people, and I know that some of us saw that dress as blue and black and others saw it as white and gold, but as far as I'm concerned, it's scone. And I'll even put a bit of a Dublin twang in it, put 2 syllables in it, it's scone, right? But if you're Scottish, and apologies to all my Scottish experts, accent experts out there. If you're Scottish, it's pronounced scoon, right? So, because there's a famous stone at Scone, the stone of Scone, the stone of destiny, is where Scottish kings traditionally went to be crowned. And by the way, again, little trivia one for the live class. Ask the question, if you want to know where the stone of Scone is now in 2024, just ask me and I'll let you know. So, Macbeth, he's going to be king. He's going to Scone. He's going to get the crown on his head. Way! You think all his dreams are going to come true. Macduff distrusts Macbeth and will not attend his coronation. That's really significant. So that's a huge insult. That's Macduff saying, I don't believe Macbeth should be king. And it's a public declaration of that. So Macduff is Macbeth's enemy. His suspicions and fears are made clear before the end of the scene. And even though it's a short scene, there are 4 brilliant quotes in it. I'm going to just highlight 2 of them here because, of course, I don't want to overload you with your learning of your quotes, but you'll see them in the knowledge checks and in the quotes tests. Now, you see the way I've put the ellipsis in here? See the 3 dots? That's because what I'm doing is I'm breaking up the quotes, you know, because you don't have to learn whole speeches, just important lines or parts. So if you're using a quote and you're leaving a bit out, just put the dot in and that will give it its integrity. So Duncan's horses turned wild in nature, 'tis said they ate themselves. Now, what are horses? Well, Paul, they're animals. What kind? They're herbivores. Horses don't eat meat. Horses are not cannibalistic. Horses don't eat other horses. So there's a brilliant use of imagery by Shakespeare to show that things are breaking down, that the natural law has been broken, and that is evident everywhere in the natural world, because the natural world is the world created by God. So when we see these really disturbing images, and that's just a really good example of one, Duncan's horses, excuse me, turning wild, and because they would be, you know, trained really well the king's horses. But Duncan's horses turning wild and becoming cannibalistic, eating meat when they're herbivores, there's an indication of God's displeasure of what's happening. We then learn Malcolm and Donalbain, the king's two sons, are stolen away and fled, which puts upon them suspicion of the deed. So we know that. We know he's already named and gone to. Are you ready? Is it Scone? No. Is it Scone? Definitely not. What is it? Scoon, to be invested. So Macbeth is going to be king. And then this. Come on, Shakespeare. Macduff. Ross is saying, well, I'm going to Scone. I want to see him be invested. I want to see him become a king. I don't want to, make an enemy of the king by not turning up. And Macduff says, yeah, okay, you go ahead. Well, may you see things done there. Adieu, lest our old robes sit easier than our new. And even if you just learned that bit there, again, I mentioned in the previous video about clothing imagery plays a significant role in this play with the raveled sleeve of care. You remember that from Act 2, Scene 2 summary. There's a great image there, isn't it? An image of the little man in the giant's robes, that he feels that Macbeth is not equipped to wear the crown. He's not somebody who is going to prove himself to be worthy to be a king. And of course, again, that's foreshadowing. That's Macduff's intelligence, his acuity, his insights, his understanding of Macbeth's character. Macbeth doesn't have the qualities that a king needs. And Macduff is worried that now that Scotland has King Macbeth, that they're going to really miss King Duncan. And don't forget, King Duncan's time was not a time of peace. There was a rebellion led by MacDonald. There was an invasion led by Sweno. So there was violence. But what Macduff is saying is, Christ, I think things are going to be really bad here. I think that we're going to look back on the reign of King Duncan and think, wow, that was a much better time to be alive in Scotland. And of course, what that again is doing is creating great tension at the end of the second act of the play, so that when we get into the third act and we see Macbeth's reign as king and him turning into a tyrant and using terror and intimidation to rule, we understand what's coming from that line. Shakespeare again, I love you, man. You rock.